Hey, what's up, guys? Today we're going to be reviewing probably one of my favorite movies of all time that I actually have not known about for pretty much like 2 months. This movie is Gattaca. Made in 1997, it's fairly new relative to movies, but it has extremely modern filmmaking and acting, and I mean, it's beautiful. What's surprising to me is the dude who made it has made some really bad movies. And one of the only movies that he made that I genuinely think is good is probably Gattaca. I mean, he did make The Truman Show, and that's really, really good. But I mean, after his first two movies, he kind of fell off. I mean, In Time is dog. The Host, what the heck is that? Good Kill sounds terrible. And no, I mean, he hasn't made a movie since 2018. I mean, wow. I mean, he made his last movie in 2005. I mean, yeah, it's good. But is it really that good? No. I mean, but it's really surprising to see where he started off with. This movie came out 25 years ago, but nothing's copied it since. It fell under the rug. Nobody cares about it. Nobody watches it. It's one of those movies it's a cult hit. You know, when you see it, you're like, "Oh my god, I can't believe that this was a movie." I mean, so many people know nothing about it. There are so many huge movies that just overtake them because of media and other YouTubers saying, "Wow, this movie's great." Very few big channels have made reviews on Gattaca. It's fell under the rug, and very few people have watched it, even though it has an amazing cast. I mean, Ethan Hawke, Uma Thurman, Jude Law. I mean, the acting is amazing in this movie too, and it's fairly early in all those people's careers. I mean, I guess Uma Thurman was in Pulp Fiction, but Ethan Hawke and Jude Law were fairly new at the time. You know, I mean, they did have some roles before that, but I mean, it's really, really surprising to see not only what they could do, but what they did, and I think it's really, really cool to see that. A lot of this movie centers around, genetics and what that could be later in. It has a very realistic portrayal of events. I mean, yeah, it's kind of obviously not too right, probably, but it takes a very stylistic and beautiful approach. Um, the coloring is very warm, has a bit of a orange hue. They did fix that in the Ultra HD Blu-ray in 2021, but it also is kind of a filmmaking thing. In some ways, the coloring is actually supposed to make the movie warmer, nicer to look at. And in some ways it is. But in others it's kind of crappy. I don't like it at all. It really just sucks. I don't know. It it really just doesn't make sense to me in some ways, because certain times people's faces will turn orange, like totally orange. It's kind of annoying to look at, but I mean, it's dealable. Most scenes are bright enough to where the orange doesn't get too bad, but some screens, yeah, it does kind of suck. But I mean, almost everything else is amazing. The soundtrack is one of the best out there in my opinion, and I mean, I think it just hits hard. The early to like the mid 90s, the 90s in general, was probably the best time for movies, straight up. 1990 to 1999 was beautiful. Especially the late 90s, 95 to 99. Truly some gems that came out during that time. Especially this movie. I love the relationship between characters. There's so much world building. There's so much in-depth character analysis that can be done. You learn a lot about these characters, and it's never shoved into your face. Some movies will literally throw stuff in your face. It takes a bit. It starts off confusing, And I really like when a movie slowly unravels over time and you learn more and more about the characters until you're totally immersed into what's going on. I mean, it truly is an amazing thing to see that I don't think anybody else has ever done truly to this degree. Honestly, it's one of those things that I truly love to see. Never will I ever think I will ever see a movie like this before. It's one of those dystopians where it just doesn't seem like it's ever it's ever replaceable. He started out so good, like most directors, because he had an idea and he played on it. What's also another thing is this movie, for being a first directorial, I mean, it only made 12.5 million on box office, but the budget was 36. It was a box office bomb. It did terribly, but it was a cult hit. I mean, this movie on Letterboxd has pretty good reviews. I mean, like 10% gives it 4 stars. Most people give it around 3.5, 4.5. I mean, that's really, really good ratings. And I mean, some people just don't get it, but it really just shows to you that this movie is something to be seen, something to be shown and say, wow, that's really freaking good. I mean, now that it's on Netflix, it really improves people who can see it, although I really don't like the version they have on Netflix. It's extremely low quality. I don't know what's going on, but it just does not look good at all. One of the other things that I would like to add on to this review is pretty much just the feeling of I don't know, some scenes are really beautiful to look at. The movie's kind of like an art piece. Very few of the scenes are displeasing to look at. Most of them are extremely fun to look at. Extremely beautiful scenery and set pieces. And a lot of these buildings are real. I mean, like, that's a real place. Like, a lot of these places where they shot, they look so like, oh, they must have made that. But they didn't. I mean, a good example of that is RoboCop. The huge tower is actually just, I think it's in Dallas. And they actually had a matte painting on top of it. I mean, it's really crazy what they did. Same thing with this. They get real places. And it doesn't look real unless you've been there. You would think it'd be like a set or something. I mean, so much of this movie is modern. It makes you think that it's a modern... I mean, it could have came out yesterday. It is not dated at all, and it will never be dated, in my opinion. Never will I watch this and be like, it just doesn't make sense now. This movie just makes sense, and I think it will always make sense, genuinely. It's one of those timeless movies that don't care. It doesn't matter. It genuinely doesn't matter. I mean, a lot of movies similar in that it is kind of just timeless. It has many things. You don't need to live in a certain era to understand these kinds of movies. That's why certain movies are really dated, that it's hard to watch. Like, especially old movies, like 70, 80-year-old movies. It's, some of them are, a lot of them are very similar, and it's kind of hard to keep watching them. I think that one of the things that really got me when I came to this movie was not only the cinematography, but just the feeling of existentialism. It makes you feel that sort of happiness inside. I don't know, it's weird and my words aren't really making sense, but it hits you and you feel as if you understand. I mean, it's one of those movies you watch one time, you're like, oh, that's really good, I want to watch it again. And then you watch it again, like, oh, that's really good, I want to watch it again. And also, the director adds a lot of little things to the movie. Now, spoiler alert, Now, if you don't want it, just, I mean, stop here. Is pretty much the interview. But some of the really big things that, if you did watch the movie, you didn't see them, at the very end, when Jude Law's character dies and he gets in the furnace, he closes the door. The silver medal, the second place silver medal around his neck, turns gold because of the flame. It reflects that yellow light. That is a thing I'd never even, like, it never processed to me until I watched it like 3 times. And then I watched a review by another, you know, person, and then I went in the comments and I saw that, and I was like, holy crap, that is so cool. There's so many little touches to the movie that just build upon the world and give you that feeling of, like, it has a very simple message, an idea, but it takes so long to get to the punchline. And it's beautiful. And if you guys, I'm very, my first video, if you guys think it did pretty good, smash a like, subscribe. I want to keep doing this, honestly. I'm learning to edit, so this is going to be pretty much a raw edit. I'm not going to be doing much to it, but I hope you guys can take out what you want from this and maybe watch it, review it, put your own 2 cents in the comments and see what you think about it. I love it. It's beautiful. It's touching. I mean, it's a little emotional at the end. I mean, and the acting. There's very few times in the movie where the acting is subpar. I mean, all of it is it's amazing. It's very, very good. I mean, all these actors are decorated. They have a lot of, really, really big awards that have been brought to them, and I think that they were a great cast to choose. And they all did amazingly. Well, I'll be back for the next one, and this is Laserdisc.